Back to the Absolute Auction Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Miner. With me is good friend Mark Shu. Mark, what is going on, my man?
Hey, not much, man. It's just been, it's been a good time out here. And we're back for some more. We're back for some more Dynasty content, some more bidding action. I'm ready to get into it.
Right? So we gave the last episode, our in draft theory, we're walking into drafts with. This episode, we're looking more into. Actually, I can edit that part out. Hang on. We're going to start all over again.
Hold on. Yeah, I don't even think you need to. Let's just get right into the question right off the bat. If we're, I think that's an easier way to jump right in.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
I know. I'm looking at it right now. All right. So, one of the good questions is we're just starting the first round of the draft. You bid. You threw your nomination out there. I threw my nomination out there. The next guy throws his nomination out there, and we're wondering: does nominating a random player before parameters and precedents are set worth it? Like, what that means is throwing out like a wide receiver number 19 or RB 24 really going to make that huge of a difference right now in a draft compared to trying to say throw out like a Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley type a name?
Simply put, no, it's not. Generally, I think you want to have a reason for everything that you're doing, and that includes your nominations. Your first nomination out of the gate should not be a random player. It just shouldn't. I actually feel like the early part of the auction draft, when the market is not set, is probably one of the more valuable places to land good players or players for good dollar values, because people are still holding on to their money. So especially if you're an early part of that first round, I would have a few top tier players in my queue that I think maybe are a little underrated compared to the market, compared to whatever consensus you're looking at. Because that there's always going to be a top five, and there's always going to be some solid players at 1, 2, and 3 at a lot of different positions, and then maybe there's 4 or 5 sitting out there, and they might not be that much different, but just you have maybe a rosier opinion on some of them than others. You take the ones you believe in, and you have those as your kind of first ideas for nominations, and see if you can get them and kind of sneak under the radar while people are saving their dollars for. Last year it was CD Lamb, and maybe you can get Jamar Chase for a little bit less than you were going to be doing. Or last year, same thing with Joe Burrow. Like you could have put Joe Burrow out there in the first round, and maybe he's a player that you can put out for cheap and get a deal on early on. So I would say it's probably better off for you to have a plan on players that you want to attack in that time where the market is not set, because that I think is where you're going to probably get the most bang for your buck, if you're really playing it right.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like if you're playing it right, like you're gonna be more mad at yourself because you're like, man, I should have stayed in that bid because like I could have got Brian Thomas Jr. for a freaking song, but blah 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 got him instead, and here I am trying to get Nico Collins instead, and Nico Collins is already $2 or $3 higher, and the bid's still going. So it's all about the nomination strategy of trying to figure out when to nominate that player. Everyone's got all that money. Everyone's excited to spend it. Like you have $200, Mark. That very first player comes out there, you're gonna put it up. You're gonna say, you know what, I'm gonna get that money out there. Let's get more money flowing. That value is too good. I'm gonna hit bid. I'm gonna bid again. Keep bidding until I say, okay, you know what, I'm good. And someone else bids me on that, I'm fine. But yeah, going out of line and trying to say like, oh, I'm gonna nominate, let's say Chris Olave right now. He played a few games last year, but missed most of the season. He's a low end type of wide receiver. Still young, yes, but throwing him out there that early, it doesn't benefit you, because at the same time, if you throw him out that much later, he's probably going to go for around the same cost.
Right. I just think it doesn't provide the right information for you early on. Like you can get that information later on, and it's still probably going to be at the same price. I don't think you're going to drive that many dollars out of the room by nominating Chris Olave when everybody has money.
Yeah.
So like I think you're better off if you want to get money out of the room, you need to dominate the players that are worth the money, right? So I would say take the big ticket, big dollar players, and again try and find one or two that are a little bit underrated in your view, and see if those players that you're nominating can get you a little bit more of a of a value because you're willing to kind of go out on a limb out for them.
Right. And then like when you're going on a limb, like, you're trying to figure out, should I keep doing this? Like, is it really worth, driving up the prices? Do I keep doing this, or is it time to say stop? In my mind, I don't believe in driving up prices unless I have it budgeted in my price line where I say like, yeah, like this player's in this tier. I'm willing to spend that kind of money. Yes, I will keep going because I know I can afford them. It's not going to break my bank. But if it goes over $1 or two, then I'm starting to get nervous. But outside of that, I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, you know what? You want him that bad, he's yours. You can take him for $65. How do you feel about that, Marco? Of like bidding them up on the prices of players?
Yeah, I think if you're willing to bid up a player, you should still want them to fit in your roster and your budget. So I'm not the one to often recommend just driving prices up on players. Really, what you want to be able to do is like if you know a league mate has a tendency and you want to exploit that a little bit, you can do that. I think that's fine. But for the most part, I'd still be just trying to play my own game. Especially if you have, players, say you've already got your wide receiver one. Like there's nothing wrong with throwing out more wide receiver one material out there for other people to spend their money on so you can kind of bring that price down. And hey, like no one's saying that in that process that if those players are out there that you're not starting to bid early and often when the price is really cheap, because ultimately like if you get them for what you're budgeting your wide receiver two for, that's great. Once you get to that limit though, you should really kind of stop or at least kind of like pull back and let other people take the lead, and hopefully the momentum just kind of carries them to a place where the price is right. I'm not really that afraid if people get deals from time to time. It's going to happen. You can't get everything. You can't win everything that's going to happen in the draft. You can't win every hand at a poker table. It just doesn't happen. But I think that when you're, if you are aggressive when the bidding is in your favor, like again, if you don't need a player, bid when they're really cheap. Bid and make sure that everybody else sees, yeah, you should be bidding on this player. But once it gets to a point where like you can't afford it or you already have it so you don't need it, you don't need to be the one who's sticking your neck out and sort of sacrificing your roster. So yeah, what I would say is bid aggressively early while it's cheap. When it gets closer to fair value or to your budget limit, back off, let other people take it, and at the end, if you want to make a final decision after the bidding dies down on if you want to take the player or not, you have it. And I don't really feel like you need to be the one who adds that extra dollar or two to the room just because it feels good to stick a player with a few extra dollars on somebody. It just doesn't make as much sense to me. I think you can really bid players up with just like your natural momentum of bidding. You should be bidding and active all game long, so people feel like they have to keep bidding and being a part of it. Because I think making sure that you're on means everybody else is going to feel like they have to be on, and maybe if they're not ready for that, then they can kind of stumble a little bit. But if you're trying to just, okay, I'm going to get a few dollars out of the room because this player is at $48, I want him to get to $50. Well, okay, if that happens and you end up bidding $50 and you already have a $50 player, you've sunk your roster too. So it's not really worth the extra risk just for those extra few dollars. Just let the draft take its course. If you don't want the player, you don't have to bid on them.
Exactly, yeah. Like you should bill on players when you know your budget can't handle that. Like you have two players and you spent $50 on each one, $100 out of a $200 budget. Your budget's half spent, and you still have a roster to fill it. Two players isn't going to do it for you. So, like looking at your roster, you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, I totally screwed up. I wish I didn't do that." You need to catch yourself before you get in those bidding wars. That's when you need to start bailing on players. It's like here, like all right, I spent this much more on this one player. I'm looking at my par sheet. I adjusted. This guy's already $10 more than what I can afford or what I'm comfortable spending. and this guy bids me $1 more. I'm bailing right now. That's fine. Let him take the victory. Let him feel like, oh man, I puffed my chest out at you and got it. And, yeah, your league mates might come around to you and say, oh man, just bid $1 more on him. Bid $1 more on him. It's like, no, I'm not going to do it because I know it's going to mess up my whole entire roster going forward. It's not worth it to me.
Right. I mean, knowing when to get rid of a player and when to bail on a player is really going to be dependent on its situation. I mean, the less you need the player, the more willing you should be to bail on that player when the price isn't good any longer, or it doesn't fit your budget. There's nothing wrong with conceding that, even if you want the player. Sometimes you just have to come to real terms and say this price is too much. It's not enough. It doesn't work for my situation right now. I already got, CD Lamb earlier. I can't spend this much on Puka or whoever, right? You can't necessarily say, "Oh, but I want them. I need it." You need to have a more disciplined mindset when it comes to that. But on the other hand, the other situation is if you need a player, like the more that you need them, the more willing you have to be to paying a premium on them. If you're one who really feels like you need at least one good running back, and there's only one that you're willing to concede to be your RB1, you're going to have to be willing to pay a few extra dollars to get them on your team, or go without, and that's not a great option either. So it's really dependent on when you have to bail. Again, I think it's more need dependent. I think, again, you need to have a reason for everything, and you shouldn't just be bidding arbitrarily. You shouldn't be bidding because this seems like a fair price. It also needs to fit your budget. It needs to fit what you've actually built in a team already, and what you can sort of withstand to get yourself to the end of the draft.
No, absolutely. And that leads us to our last thing of nominating a random player that you don't want or have any interest in, but it will help possibly drain funds. You and I have come to agreement now that tight ends are not really worth it, no matter if it's tight end premium or anything like that. Brock Bowers, he's being listed as tight end 1 in Dynasty right now. He can go for a pretty penny based on exactly what type of quarterback they get. There's rumors of Sam Darnold, we use as an example, possibly signing with the Raiders. That could boost up his draft costs. He could be pushing back when Kelsey was dominant. Pushing close to $30 in total when you can actually buy a tight end who actually could be a lot cheaper than that for half the price. Like you say, like a David Njoku or someone else to pair with it. So now I'm naming a player like Bowers, knowing that having a repeat year might be well worth it, knowing that trying to get that tight end 1 to repeat as tight end 1 is pretty much near impossible. We've only seen it happen a couple times, but it's very rare that it pays off in the long run. How do you feel about nominating random players that you have no interest in? Or do you always have interest in every player in some way, shape, or form that it doesn't matter? It just boils down to the cost of what it starts going out.
No, I think having players you don't have interest in is probably good after either if you want to spend if you do want to drain money from the room. I don't think there's anything wrong with nominating players you don't want. Again, I don't really like to spend on running backs, so I'm happy to throw running backs out there when I need to get myself back from lower stack to one of the higher stacks in the room. But I would say for the most part, while you have your nominations, you want to be able to use them effectively. So I don't really like having to throw out players that I'm not going to have interest in. I want to make sure that I do have some players that I want to bid on for the most part, but then it's kind of more like an exit strategy when you either have less money to spend and you want other people to kind of get down to your level. I think that's also it's a good time to just I guess really if you have if you don't have a tight end, I think that's a good way to go about it. Instead of nominating random players, I kind of go with where have I not spent money, which is usually running back and tight end, and maybe quarterback, because quarterback you can stream, and there are a lot of good quarterbacks this year, so I might try and get some quarterbacks for $1 or $2. That's when I would throw out I'd throw out maybe a quarterback, or I'd throw out maybe a tight end that I like, that I can get for under $5. I'll put them out there, and then other people can go for it. Once I have a tight end or a quarterback, I'm not doing that anymore because I don't want to back up more than likely, unless it's at the end and nobody has money. But you know what I mean. I'm not trying to drain money when I've already kind of made my quarterback. So you really got one. You got one shot to get the quarterback and the tight end. Once they're bought and you got them for that cheaper price, then you gotta move on. But I would say, yeah, if you have no interest in top end players, I don't see anything wrong with throwing them out. But I do think they're going to get thrown out anyway. So I'm more likely to want to throw out at least guys that I'm willing to compete on. You know, I not just players that I'm throwing out. I know that they're going to go. I think it's fine strategy, but again, you only are in control of so many of your nominations, like in the entire draft. So I think it's important to have it serve a purpose to you more than just people are gonna spend. And people can spend, they will, but sometimes it's also good for it to fit your needs more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't be pushing the limits. Like, if you start like seeing the limits of like players of like bidding on it, you're like, all right, you know what? That's too low. I'm gonna bid on him. Like, yeah, but I know this guy needs him. Like, you know, he'll bid another dollar. It's like that's when people pull the chair out on you too, because they think like, oh no, that value is too low. I can't let him go for that low. You bid another dollar. You don't need that player, but you got him anyways. You don't want to be doing that either. You got to be careful of trying to think like, oh, I can push it one more dollar, knowing that they're not going to flip it.
Right. I think if, you know, again, I threw out the scenario that like this might be something that you want to try to do when you need to get down to a lower stack. But also that's why nominating players that you know you want to get for cheap, throw out some cheap options there. And then if people spend on them, that'll drain a few extra dollars from them. It's not going to be a ton again with quarterback and tight end unless you're on those top tier players. But you can get all those quarterbacks out of there. You can get your decisions kind of made for you because people are willing to spend in those spots, and it is answering questions on the market for you as well, so you can kind of learn from that.
Yep. And that's what's nice about auctions. It's continuous learning. You know, do you want to go in win now? Do you want to have productive struggle, or do you want to basically just be ready for the rookie draft? That's how it all boils down to. What 3 months do you want to go into with?
Yeah. I'm never one who wants to be the one for the rookie draft. I will trade my picks almost every time.
I try to do it. Most people want to give like nothing for them though. I'm like, not for the 101. Maybe this year though.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll be talking about rookies soon enough.
Oh yeah, I'll be coming up here soon. Well, that'll do it for me tonight, Mark. You got anything else, bud?
No, I'm dry here now.
Yeah, I think we nailed everything pretty much on that one. So we'll wrap this one up, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.